A very good morning. Myself Dr. Ruchi Gupta. Today I'll describe one concept, that is web service. So, what is the concept of this web service? Web service is basically it is a software design system that is basically used for the communication between the client and the server. So, if any client want to communicate with the server, so we have to use one mediator, one software facility that is used to communicate between the client and the server, that it is called a web service. So, proper definition of this web service is, web service, it is defined as a software system that is designed to support and to incorporate the machine-to-machine interactor over the network. So, or we can say that a web service, it is an interface between the two machines, that is a machine executable format, and how we can interact through the web service with the help of this web service description language. So, we are using the WSDL language for the communication between machine to machine. So, web service, they are remotely executed and they do not depend on any resource. So, one is a client system and another one is a server system. So, client will be communicate with the server through a remote procedure call, and they have to communicate, they have to send the HTTP, client will send the HTTP request to the server with the help of this web service concept. So, web service, this is a remotely executed and they do not depend on any resource residing on the client system that calls on. Other systems interact with the web service in a manner that prescribed its description using a SOAP message. So, basically we have to use a SOAP message for the interaction between the machines, and typically we have to using the HTTP with an XML serialization. So, HTTP, it is a hypertext transfer protocol that is used to communicate through the text message from client to server. So, web service, they are modular software components, and it is also, we called it application facility that is accessible over the web using the SOAP protocol, that is a simple object access protocol, and basically it is a standardizing message protocol through which one machine will interact with the another machine over the web. So, applications invoke the web services like remote procedure calls. So, a SOAP message will be embedded into the HTTP request. So, once we have to send this HTTP request to the server, so a SOAP message is embedded into a HTTP request and it will send to the server. So, HTTP request to the web location that is associated with the service. So, web service performs the application logic for the message, and then when the result it returns as the output in the form of another SOAP message. So, we can say the SOAP message is to be embedded with the HTTP request when the request is sent to the client, when the client will send the request to the server, and it come back, get back with the server when the outcome will receive by the server. So, this is the architecture of web service. So, this is a client side, this is our client side, and this is our server side. So, as I have already told that web service is basically a software facility that is used to communicate from one machine to another machine. So, in one machine we have a client and in another machine we have a server. So, one machine want to communicate with the another machine. So, in what way they have to communicate? So, first of all, the client will interact with the server through this HTTP request. So, suppose if I am a client and I am sitting on the client side, so I will put just a request on the web browser. So, this is a client web browser and this is the server web browser. So, the HTTP request will go through this web browser with the help of this TCP protocol, that is a transmission control protocol, and that request will send to the server. So, the same process will, the same request will executed on the server and the response get back to the client. So, in this once our request is to be transmitted over the channel, so it will transmit in the form of HTTP, and the SOAP message is to be embedded in this HTTP request. So, this is the whole architecture of web service, that how the two machines are communicate with each other. Now, the if I'm talking about the characteristics of web service, so web service basically they consist of the collections of operations that can be used by the client over the internet. So, as I have seen that if one machine want to communicate with another machine, then we need a number of operations we are required for the transmission of request and response over the machines. So, the operations in a web service may be it provided by a variety of resources, for example, program, objects and or the databases. So, the key characteristics of the web service that they have to process in the XML format only. So, once we have to send the request to the server, your request is to be sent through the XML format, that is the extensible markup format, and the SOAP message. And alternate approach of the communication is a REST approach. We will discuss this REST approach later. So, how does it works? Each web service, it uses its applications description with the service characteristics of the message. So, for example, this is your client side and this one is your server side, and client want to communicate with the server. For example, if I am taking an example of travel agent web service. So, we have used a travel agent web service as a software facilitator between the client and server. So, when client will interact with the server, so it will send the request, HTTP request to the server, and for example, if I just want to send the request for the hotel web service or the airline or the credit or other facilities, so we can interact with the we can interact with the web service. So, if I am taking any example of like travel agent services. So, in that case, if I just want to book my ticket through the travel agencies, then I'll just put the request for the tickets or the person. So, it will interact with the server. So, this is the process that how they are communicate with each other. Now, there are certain components of web service which we have to use over the communication of web. So, the first component, as we have seen that XML and HTTP is the most fundamental web service platform. So, they are using a different components. The first component is a SOAP, that is a simple object access protocol. So, what is this SOAP? It is a transport independent message protocol through which we can send the XML data over the web. So, SOAP is built on sending the XML data in the form of SOAP message, which is embedded in the HTTP request. So, the document known as an XML document, it is attached to the each message which is sent over the web, and only the structure of XML document, not the content. So, once we have to send this SOAP message, the message through the SOAP protocol, so we have to just send the XML document, not the whole content over the web. So, the best thing about the web service and SOAP is everything is sent through the HTTP and the web protocol. Now, a root element, that is known as the element, is required in every SOAP document, which is called the XML document. Now, if we are talking about this definition of this SOAP protocol, so SOAP, it is It is a XML protocol for exchanging the messages between the between various applications over the net, and it provides the standardization way of serving the communication. For example, if I am taking an example of banking service, as we have all are using the web service, banking web services. So, through which how we can communicate with the server. So, in background there are number of SOAP messages are inbuilt in the HTTP request. This is a SOAP architecture. This is the web service on the client, and this is web service on the server side. So, we are using here the WSDL interface to communicate with the client and server. So, once we have to send this HTTP request, so SOAP message is to be embedded in this HTTP request, and it will send to the server. So, it will send through the embedded in the HTTP request, and for the communication we are using here TCP IP protocol. So, SOAP basically it is a network application protocol that is used to transfer the message between service instance and described by WSDL interface. So, we have to share the, we have to communicate with the server through this web service, and in the web service we have to send the HTTP request, and this SOAP message to be embedded in this HTTP request, and we are using here TCP IP protocol for communication. Now, how they communicate with each other? This is your sender side and this one is your receiver side. So, sender send the request and this SOAP message. SOAP message is embedded in this HTTP request. So, it will send to the server. Similarly, once your request to be received by the receiver, then it will execute this, receiver will execute this request and send back the response to the client. So, again the SOAP message, the SOAP is embedded in the HTTP response and it will come back to the receiver, sender. So, this is the process of exchange pattern, that how the message are to be exchanged over the web between one machine to another machine. Now, the next components which we have to use in the web service is UDDI. So, what is this UDDI? It's a universal description, discovery and integration. So, UDDI is basically it is used for publishing and discovering the service provider online services. So, once we have to provide some online services to the over the web, then in that case we are using this concept of UDDI, that is universal description, discovery and integration. So, UDDI is basically we can say it is a repository which stores the information, which store the request and response data, where WSDL files can be hosted and the client application can discover a WSDL files to learn about the various actions which is offered by the web service. So, as a result, the client application will have a full access of UDDI. It have a complete access and information about the web services which is communicate between one machine to another machine, and it work as a UDDI registry. It work as a UDDI is work as a repository of the web services. So, the UDDI registry, it will hold the required information for the online services, and just as we have just taken an example, it is just like an telephone directory. Okay. So, as the telephone directory or a repository, it contains the numbers, telephone numbers of all the persons. Similarly, it is a repository that will contain the information of all the requests and responsible which is communicate through the web service. So, it's just like a telephone directory that has the name, address and the phone number of a certain individual. so that the client application might figure out where it is. So this is the actual concept of this UDDI. Now, the definition of this UDDI, it is a registry service for publishing and finding the web services. So, what is the role of SOA in this UDDI? It acts like a yellow pages for service, and it is a dynamic discovery of services at runtime. Means it will update the repository of the data at runtime basis. For example, a travel website discovers a currency conversion service from the UDDI registry. So, any travel agency, if they have some currency conversion, then they have to store the information, they have to access the information from the UDDI registry. Now, the next service is, the next component is WSDL. So, what is WSDL? It is a web service description language. So, what is the concept of this? Basically, the WSDL protocol, it is used for the communication. So, the client, because as we already know in the web service concept, one is a client and another one is a server. So, here the client invoke the web service that should be aware of the location of the web service. So, the client side, once it will invoke the web service, so it will aware the location of the web service of the server, then only it will communicate with the server. Now, secondly, the client application must understand that what the web service does in order to invoke the correct web service. So, basically, we have to invoke the correct web service or not. The whole information is to be contained by the WSDL. So, WSDL, it is basically, we can say that it is a kind of this web service that is used to accomplish the task of the web services which is published on the server and on the client side. So, the WSDL file, it is, or we can say that it is another XML file document that explain what is the web service and does the web service of the client. Now, the client applications will be able to understand where the web service is located and how use it by using the WSDL document. So, basically, what it defines, what defines the WSDL document, that when we have to publish the web services, where we have to invoke the web services over the server, and at which location your web services to be located. So, it will contain all the information of this web service. Now, the next is main component or major component of this web service is XML, that is extensible markup language. So, what is this extensible markup language? So, this extensible markup language, it represents an exchange structured of data. So, in a web service, if we want to transfer the data in a structured form, then we have to use this XML. The data is to be transmitted through the XML form. As we have seen that in client server communication, we are using HTML format, that is a hypertext markup language. Similarly, in this web service concept, we have to use this XML format for transmitting the data. So, what is the role of XML in this SOA? Number one, it is foundation of SOAP and WSDL. Basically, it is, we can say that it is a founding facility between this SOAP and WSDL component, and it will ensure that data is to be platform independent. So, because what happens in the web service communication, each machines have a different platform. So, we don't know that at which machine, at which platform we have to send the request, and where when we have to send the request to the server. So, that server is having what type of platform. So, we can say that if we want to send the request and response over the cross platform area, then in that case we have to use this XML, because it ensures that data is to be platform independent. So these are some components which we have to use for this use in this web service component. So in this method, as we have seen here, in this whole architecture, we are using the 4 major components for the communication over the web from one machine to another machine. One is a SOAP. SOAP is the first component is a SOAP component which we have to use in this communication. Second is a XML, that is a extensible markup language. It is also a major component. And third one which we have to use a WSDL. This is also a component of this web service architecture, as we have seen here. Main components, SOAP component, then we have a UDDI. UDDI is one of the main component which we have to use in web service. So here we have seen that there are 4 main components we have to use for this web service. So this is the whole concept of web service which we have to use for the communication in the client server architecture. And this is the layered architecture of the web protocol stack. We called it web server protocol or the web service protocol stack. So these are the different layers of the web protocol stack. This is the conceptual step. Here we have already discussed about the WSDL, UDDI, SOAP. These are the major components which we have to use in this architecture. So all these components we have to use in this web protocol stack. So this is your service flow, service discovery, service publication, description, XML based messaging and networking. So these are the various components which we have to use in this service protocol. So the first is a service transport protocol. So what is the mean of this service transport protocol? The network layer, that is also a foundation of this web service protocol stack. It is responsible for transmitting the message. So transformation of message is to be handled by this transport protocol between the network and the application. And as we have already discussed that HTTP, it is a network protocol that is available for the web service. So it also provide the network protocol like SMTP, simple markup, mail transfer protocol, file transfer protocol and block extensible protocol. Second is a messaging protocol that is responsible for encoding the messages between the client and server. Now the third one is the description protocol, that is describing the public interface between the client and server machine. And the finally is the discovery protocol, that is centralized service in the common registry. So this is all about this web service protocol stack. So thank you very much.